My question basically stems from the Kalam cosmological argument.
All right.
Consider me, yeah. I don't necessarily take it to my, as proof or evidence of anything, but I don't understand necessarily how to go about that or whether that idea is wrong.
Sure.
Personally, I think the arguments are kind of like, okay, we quote unquote defining something into existence, where it's like we're using our own interpretation of things to create something that we don't really understand, if that makes sense at all.
It does, but for people who are not well-versed in Kalam, it probably is starting to go over some people's heads. Do you know the premises? Would you be okay with presenting the premises?
Yeah. Awesome. Whatever begins to exist has a cause.
Okay, that is premise one. Hold on.
Yeah.
Premise one is whatever begins to exist has a cause. Okay? Premise two is?
The universe began to exist.
The universe began to exist. Okay. Premise three, or conclusion?
Therefore, the universe has a cause.
Therefore, the universe has a cause. So you can go a couple different ways with this, and I'll tell you where I go with it. Where I go with it is I don't agree with premise one. If you say everything that exists has a beginning to its existence, what you're saying is that you have knowledge that you couldn't possibly have, right? If we're talking about knowledge of everything in this universe, we're stuck on this tiny little planet orbiting in this one tiny solar system in this one galaxy. Mm-hmm. We don't know so much that is a presumption that I'm not comfortable making. And so if somebody were to present that, I would say, I disagree with premise one, because the correct answer to me, and I think that anybody who would be honestly approaching it would say, is, I don't know.
Premise two also has issues for me. I mean, we can assume that the universe began to exist, but that's not concrete enough to build an entire argument on for me. I mean, as far as we know, if the argument is then going to be that a God who existed forever caused the universe, then why not just extend that existing forever concept to the universe? What if the universe just existed forever? Because that's ultimately the direction they're going to go. Yeah. I mean, we can just, come up with a bunch of different ideas that might disprove that. Right. What if our universe, the instantiation of our universe, came at the end of another universe? Exactly. What if, the end of Men in Black is true and we're just all, in marbles, that's being played with by giant aliens? There's, what if we're all in the Matrix? There are so many things that we would need to kind of test for, because otherwise we don't know. And right now, I don't know how we can test for those things. Right. And that falls into the conclusion, because the conclusion, if the conclusion is just the universe had a cause, that still doesn't say anything about God. Yeah. God is not anywhere in the Kalam argument necessarily. Say we agree with the Kalam cosmological argument, even granting all of these other hesitations, that still only gets us to, okay, well then what is the cause? And that's a massive jump to get not only to a God, but a specific God of a specific religion. Absolutely. I've heard people say that this can be an argument for deism. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I don't think we can even get that far, because that assumes that there's intelligence and that there's some kind of plan or anything like that. I know Matt uses the example universe farting pixies. Yeah, who's to know? But if that was the case, if it was farted by a pixie, you can assume that was not an intentional thing that was created with a plan and a purpose other than to relieve said pixie. Exactly. And perhaps that's our purpose. That's the goal in life. To relieve the pixie. Exactly. I don't know. I feel like that's a weird a weird way to go. But that's going to get clipped in weird ways. Yeah, absolutely. But that said, you can't get intelligence, you can't get intent, you can't get anything that's classically attributed to a deity. And so because of that, it's just, you don't need to take premise one. You don't need to take premise two. Mm-hmm. You don't need to take the conclusion. And if you took all three, it still doesn't get you anywhere. So if you're wondering about...
how to refute it, it's kind of full of holes.
All right. And so this is kind of where, so I 100% agree for the most part, and that's kind of my basic understanding of how to go about it. But I don't know if this is necessarily a trap. If I was discussing this with someone, but sometimes I get a lot, especially when I discuss this, I guess, with family, you could say, or friends. I just came out of that community. They bring up the whole, you can't have an infinite regression. So the universe had to begin to exist at some point, and then they use that as a takeoff point to say that there must have been a God because of the infinite regression. And I guess that's where my piece, I kind of have a problem or confusion about it, is because is that actually true? Because I know the concept of infinity, you can get two different solutions, I guess, to your problem. And they kind of use that to demonstrate that you can't have an infinite regression because it doesn't work mathematically. And I guess my same argument there would be mathematics is, I want to say, like a unit of measurement that we use to kind of understand things, if that's a really, really rough description of it. But I don't know how and that's kind of where I fall off to where I know or understand what I'm talking about, is I don't really know where to go from that, because it feels like they're creating something that I don't understand how to refute or completely understand if their statement is true or not.
Can I just hazard a guess that they don't understand it either? They've heard infinite regression somewhere, but I bet you anything, if you ask them to do the mathematical equation that proved that, they probably couldn't, which, is by itself not a refutation at all. But the fact that you are delving into the math of this, I think is giving them a little bit too much credit. I think the only question you would need to ask them is, okay, so you can't have something that exists forever because that causes an infinite regression. So what about God? And if they give God properties that, he's excluded from that, then you ask, how do you know that? And why couldn't that be attributed to the universe and just cut out the middleman altogether?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That's fucking exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. And that has a name. It's called special pleading. If you're going to attribute, everything has to follow these rules except for my answer, that's special pleading. And, but hopefully that helps.
No, yeah, that makes a lot. I guess I did exactly what she was saying, is that I was giving the argument too much credit, when to me it didn't make enough sense for me to kind of grab onto it and think it's solid and valid. So I guess that's why I'm asking the question. I didn't take it far enough to understand that it is a case of special pleading, I guess you could say. So yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for calling in. That was a good question.
Yeah, totally.
Take care.
You have a good one.
You too. All right. So next, I'm sorry, I'm just going through.
Yeah, no, let's do this.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Isn't this addicting?
It's awesome. I love it.
It's so fucking cool. Yeah.